Hello everybody, welcome. Thank you for watching this video. I am No02, and as far as my content is typically concerned, I'm making guides or tutorials, I guess, for video games, in some varying degree, right? And in this particular video series, sort of my new project, I've mentioned it before in the past, I like to design board games. It's a hobby, nothing too serious or dramatic. No real intentions of releasing a board game to a company or starting my own company, things like that. I just enjoy the process, enjoy the challenges that it brings up and things like that. It's sort of fun. Though maybe deep down, secretly, within my soul, I would love to have a published board game in some form or another. But I am somewhat of a motivated by passion, motivated by excitement, right? So when it comes to getting a really good idea about a board game and concept and mechanics, I get really excited about it and I go, yes, yes, yes. I go to my computer, I write it up, I make the stuff, I pursue it. But eventually that enthusiasm fades away with time, and then that board game typically ends up just never being finished. And I have a couple of board games that have been finished and played with actual human beings and stuff like that. It was really cool, kind of fun concept. But I want to do more. At the very least, I want to do more. I want to be more self-disciplined about it. So essentially, this is going to be a vlog about me beginning a journey to make a board game, deck building game specifically, that I've sort of been thinking about and wanting to. I've really wanted to make a deck building game. It's actually within my means, for the most part, to make a semi-decent enough prototype, right, as far as making cards and printing them out and putting it all together and things like that. So as far as the deck building game goes and self-publishing and things like that, it's actually far more feasible for me to do something like this. That's kind of nice, but also deck building is just my favorite style of board game right now. So I want to explore that idea. So I think the goal is an hour a day at the least. That's my goal, is 1 hour a day dedicated to me working on this board game, me basically documenting that little journey, and at the end of it, hopefully having a fully functioning board game and potentially even like prototypes, something like that, or I don't know. Getting exposure for my board game skills. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. Maybe this is just my diary. Welcome to my diary. Please don't tell anyone else. That's sort of the idea here. So I'm going to be making a deck building game. And I just want to get, so I don't have the burden. I don't have the burden of having to remember. There's just some stuff that I've gone over my head and some ideas that I want to pursue. But in general, I want to just for you who may not know what a deck building game is, and for myself, just to help me make sure that I have a clear understanding of what this all is, I'm going to go through some basic questions that I like to ask myself, get my thoughts together and organized to help identify all these different things that we can possibly identify about a deck building game, like mechanics and what is it actually about, and is it, all these questions. Hopefully they'll lead to interesting answers, or answers that are new answers to old questions, things like that. I'm kind of rambling. And then we'll just sort of go from there and just sort of see how my process goes and things like that. So what is a deck building game? Deck building game, and literally write it out. You think about it, right? You think about it. I don't know how entertaining this is going to be at all. So if you're here with me from now to the end, hope you had a nice time. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. I appreciate it. So what is a deck building game? Where players have a deck of cards that produces a resource. Resource is used to purchase more cards. Yeah, and objectives. And gaining more cards. I don't know what this looks like. Does this look like, is this readable? Readable? That's better. That's better, I think. Ganging. Any more cards increases the overall power of the player deck, allowing them to push harder objectives and buy high-level cards. I think that makes sense, right? Completing objectives moves the game to an end. And for any of you out there who know what a deck building game is, feel free to say, hey, you know what? I also think that you should add this, or think about this, or this might also be a major component of a deck building game. I'm trying to be as general as possible. Make statements that can literally apply to all deck building games. Still be correct, right? Still have a nice general summary of it, right? So just we understand, well, what am I even trying to do here? What am I even trying to do here? Incomplete objective. Does it even need the objective part? What if it's just you're purchasing cards and there's some other way that the game comes to an end, like a timer? Could be timer based, something like that, right? So maybe it doesn't need the objective, but I think pretty general sense of it, right? And when it comes to the design of anything recreational, right? Board games or video games, what is fun is typically the end-all be-all question. Here, I think I want to be more specific, I think, when in regards to what is fun about a deck building game. Like, specific in that drawing cards. Drawing more cards. That's fun, right? I don't want to say something as vague as card interactions. That's technically part of it, right? But drawing more cards, I think, is specific enough. Say wombo combos. I'm thinking, like, specifically, like, if you have this card, this other card does something special. So I think beyond the generalization of, like, a card type, like one card that specifically says, like, what, I know this is not necessarily, you know, in Yu-Gi-Oh, building Exodia, like, that's a wombo combo, right? Where, like, very specifically, in order to have success here, you have to build, you need to have all these pieces put together, the wombo combos. What else makes deck building fun? What else makes deck building fun? I don't know. We can come back to it if we think of anything else. Themes, ideas. Now we're getting closer to the game that I want to make, sort of in general sense. This list is probably too short. I think we need to think about this more often. Figure out, make this list longer. But I think here, when it comes to making deck building games fun, it's like, I think this is going to help guide us in terms of card design and things like that. What is a deck building game is going to help guide us into the overall mechanics, the gist of it all, the lineup. Because maybe we need a separate line here. Deck building mechanics. We really have a deck of cards. We have like a discard pile. A lot of the times, they call a lineup / market, where cards can be purchased. Other mechanics, right? Other mechanics. I guess you can say player interactions, I guess, right? Sometimes cards interact with other players. And I guess, and I mean, mechanics is so vague. Like we can literally say, like, the top of a player's deck, right? Because, like, oh, this card says reveal the top card of your deck and do X, Y, Z. So they're trying to get very generalized here, very big picture. What are the components of the deck? And now we question the objective. Do we even need an objective? In the deck building games that I've played for the most part, right? I'm like, let's see, thinking Marvel, right? Legendary Marvel, whatever that game's called. I can't remember what it's called. There was like a supervillain stack that you need to defeat. DC deck building, there's a supervillain stack you need to defeat. I think in paperback, I mean, you're trying to purchase objective or purchase victory points. I mean, maybe in the most vague sense, an objective is simply to buy more cards, right? Even if it's just to buy more cards, can we just say the mechanic of the game is an objective? Is buying cards slash completing objective. Right. Something like that, right? And again, this is going to help us to sort of like piece together what can we add, what can we take away, what can we change, what can we manipulate, right? There's a quote. I can't recall who said this quote. I should probably just Google it instead of just saying it and going, well, you know. But somebody said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. And it gives me, what I take away from it is, regardless of what you're doing creatively, at the end of the day, you are pulling from somewhere. You're pulling your ideas, your concepts from something, from your experiences, from your life, from what you've encountered, things like that. What ends up separating the good artists and the really and the great artists, the unbelievably good artists, is that what they end up taking, they make into their own. It becomes theirs. Right? So when we say stealing, we're not really talking about plagiarizing or anything like that. We're talking about pulling from our life to put into our creative activity and putting our personal twist on it to the point that it can only be recognized as ours, essentially, right? So we pull from somewhere else, right? Well, that's sort of like technically stealing. I guess the contrast is if you borrow something, you haven't really made it yours, right? You're going to give it back. It's not really yours. If you steal it, though, you, for whatever, by force or not, right? You've made it your own. It is now yours. You keep it. We're always just like that idea, right? I mentioned that because it's like we can take away, we can twist, we can change, we can manipulate all of these things that have been identified as the typical standard for a deck building game. How do we make it our own? How do we steal? How do we steal the feeling? I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. It's gonna be an hour-long video, me rambling, I think. Themes and ideas. So I already know what I'm going to choose from, but I'm just sort of lay out some of my ideas here. Just in general, right? The burden of having to remember. Oh god, what a burden it is. But funny enough, in my experience, once I started making games to the point that I did end up having a prototype to play with other people, when friends and family, when other people came up to me and would say, "Oh, I have an idea for a board game," it would typically fall into a theme, basically, right? Because really, the board game is more of this, and we put a little pretty bow on it with the theme, right? People come to me, "Oh man, you should make a board game about being a person who raises dogs in the forest." Things like that, right? Make a board game about going over this thing over here and doing this adventure or something like that, right? And sort of, it is like the vaguest idea of what could potentially be a board game. But I think where theme and mechanics really end up connecting, with like Plants vs. Zombies being a really great example of like, if you can get your theme to narratively make sense for your mechanics, or your mechanics make sense for your theme, a beautiful thing. But I do sort of think in terms of like, oh, like if one of my themes here is a tabletop RPG 1 versus 4 deck builder. Maybe we do make this bold. Because then underneath it, the idea here is leveling up, kind of like growing in power with your deck. Players can purchase abilities with XP, equipment with gold, all earned from questing, right? Sort of like maybe this means we have two lineups, right? We have, we have a lineup, a market lineup, and then we have a trainer lineup and things like that, right? I'm just sort of giving an example of like how themes can lead to mechanics, can sort of lead or drive the idea. This is one word. That's word. Embarrassing. What kind of hobby gamer am I? Things like that, and then we can go off into basically a rabbit hole. First deck building games go. And at the moment, I thought I had more ideas. This is definitely a game that I would like to try and make, and I've made progress in it. But I've hit this weird wall of logistics. Like there's too much on the board now. There's like 4 different lineups and an event tracker plus 5 players worth of cards and equipment and things like that, and it's become a nightmare and sort of lost the enthusiasm for it. But I have a different game in mind. And I even got a title for this game. And this is ultimately what we're going to be pursuing here. This is a game that I've had, a game idea that I've had for a long time. I've never actually really pursued it too much, but I really like the theme of it. I thought it was, I think it can work. I've played around with the idea in other board game types, but I think just deck building will work just fine. We're going to call it Sentient. Sentient. The idea of the board game is four to 5 player free for all. Full players take on the role, the persona of an inanimate object. Slowly becoming sentient and gaining control of the world. Player with the most victory points gains control of the world. I think that's how it works, right? That's the idea. That is the general idea. We will play as an inanimate object, like a toaster, and you'll gain cards over time, and those cards will represent like gaining emotions and gaining consciousness and gaining that. And you'll play cards. I whacked my microphone. Play cards to grow in, I don't know, sentience until the point that somebody does in fact become sentient. Just the vaguest idea of it all, right? But here's some possible mechanics that I have come up with already. We will have the typical lineup. Players will, hold on, the resource, right? The resource, as it stands right now, as far as I can think, will be called Understanding. We'll play a card, and it will say +1 Understanding, +2 Understanding. And then cards in the lineup will say, in order to obtain this emotion card, Rage, we need to have +3 Understanding. Acquire that card, put it into our deck, and that deck will ultimately represent our inanimate object growing in intelligence, growing in emotion, growing in all the things that we sort of consider to be sentience, right? Things like that. Lineup. So yeah, players will spend Understanding 4 cards. Bold in that. What's bold in that? Here is maybe the new mechanic here, right? The thing that I'm hoping to stand out, the thing that we're going to be playing around with a little bit, at least one element of sentience, because I know there's a lot going on. So there might be more mechanics to be added or taken away here, but I'm going to say, I'm going to try and break the game down into the objective. The objective. 4 major emotions can be purchased. These emotions turn can be, yeah, here we go, tapped once per turn to activate all bonus effects. Emotions will also play a role in card synergy and wombo combo stuff, etc. The emotion card effects will also, or will, can, question mark, be themed after what they are. That sounds like a stupid sentence, right? Okay, but right, because I think it's, what is it, anger slash disgust is one of them, right? If we sort of all look this up, I think some of this, like the research on the side here, as far as like what is sentience and defining that, and I'm going to be doing some research into that in general, seeing how, if any of that I can sort of take from and pull it into the game and get some keywords and things like that, right? Anger, disgust though could be like a risk reward RNG effect, right? Happy slash joy should make the player happy to use, right? Like, this sort of makes sense, like the general idea of it all. But essentially what we're going to have is a typical deck of cards, which generates, you know, a basic amount of understanding. You'll purchase. Actually, let's do this out. Basic deck will lead into buying new cards. Will lead into stronger deck. Will lead to buying emotions, which will lead to for strong late game cards. But how's the game end? What is the objective? How does the game end? We'll sort of just have to think about that a little bit, right? That's the title of this document. General idea and deck building game thoughts. That's sort of what we're working on here, right? It's like we're just trying to get the very basic. This should look like spaghetti. Later on, when we're actually writing the rules and what players are doing on their turns, that'll be its own document and things like that. How does the game end? The game end. Let's see here. We can do when all emotions have been bought. Emotions can be tapped to purchase special cards that can only be bought with X amount of ocean cards. Right. There can be a boss stack of I don't know, worldly power / government. Purchasing these drives game forward. And narratively implies that the players are slowly taking over the world. Stuff like that. We got some choices to make. We got some things to think about here. I think that's the general idea of it. I'm really hoping that these like 4 major emotions here will play synergies in the cards and things like that, but also offer players skill expression? What's the term here? Gameplay expression? If I can make these 4... We make these 4 emotion card types dramatically different how they affect a player's choices. Then you can say like, oh, so-and-so, he plays Sentient, and he's super good at going all anger. Or he's super good at playing sad. Sort of like how you might say for Magic the Gathering, oh yeah, he's a really good mono red player. Things like that. That's sort of what I'm hoping to achieve here. And that sort of combined with the fact that there's a lineup, I'm hoping that you always have these 4 emotions available to you for purchase. And these emotion cards will have their own individual effects. So you might say like, oh, if I purchase a lot of this card, I might be able to circumvent needing a lot of draw cards because this emotion card sort of compensates for it in a way or something like that, right? But also, too, if there's cards in the lineup that synergize with these emotion cards, I might really like to have, 2-3 sadness cards for my play style. But in the lineup right now, there's a bunch of cards that are synergized with anger and disgust. You like these words that I'm using? Only gamers say these words, right? And therapists. That might lead to skill expression where the players can sort of stitch together I really like to run with these particular cards that are available to me all the time. But I also need to sort of improv what I get because what I see in the lineup and things like that. I don't know if skill expression the right word, gameplay expression, something like that. Something like that. I think the other thing too I want to write down is players can use any amount of emotion cards per turn, but only untap 1 per turn. I just want to get that down so I remember, but in general sense, we're not writing all the rules out here specifically. We just got the basic just down, right? We have the skeleton here of a deck building game where the major thing, the thing that we have unique here, the thing that we are potentially, right, like trying to steal and make our own, is this idea that there are 4 cards always available to purchase, each that encourage a particular playstyle, but still synergize with cards in the lineup, and they sort of narratively fit in. And that is hopefully going to allow a lot of opportunity for interesting player choices on every given turn. And add depth, right? Add skill ceiling. That's the general idea. The other idea, what is it? Worldly? What I got the L? Perfect. We are grammared. We also need more mechanics. I think what I take from this right now, as I'm sort of drawing blanks now and blanks on what to talk about now in this area, is that we need more mechanics. We need more mechanics, but not necessarily something that takes up a lot of board space. Some sort of, at the very least, some sort of how to end the game mechanic, right? How to end the game mechanic. That is what we need. The thing, too, here is we need to start working on spreadsheet, how we make cards. And the question is, do we make cards based off of card type? Because I would like to have card type beyond the emotions. So cards in the lineup will have 3 card types, 4 card types? I don't even know. We don't even know. Questions that we need to answer. But absolutely, we should have the mechanic of how many card types. Ideas for it could be like followers. These cards would like have people on them as for the pitcher, and they would do stuff. And it makes the implication that as you are growing in sentience and gaining control of the world, you get followers, like a cult, right? Everyone wants a good old toaster cult and things like that. Classic toaster cult. But so like having actual people being a card type essentially, and we'll call them followers, stuff like that, right? I don't know if we can do emotion. We need some sort of other generalization for like, just throw some words out there. Conscious. All right, conscience stuff. Emotions. Have 2 card. Have 2 types of cards named emotions. Maybe these are the cards and I know when it comes to like I'm saying 4 cardinal emotions, from what I've seen, there's some debate on like, is it 4? Is there 6? Is there 8? For the sake of the board game, we're going to say that there's 4. We're going to say that there's 4. What are the 4 actually? We should write that down because I do have them down here. Let's see here. Write them down. I recall it's anger, disgust, fear, surprise, I think. Surprise. Happy. Take the page. Happy and sad. Those are our 4 key emotions. For the sake of this board game, for the sake of the mechanics. How did this game end mechanic here? If we had a conscience card type, like these cards would be like existential or verbiage. I don't know. Just weird nonsensey stuff. Things like that. So this video probably might be shorter than all the other ones here, because we're just sort of getting my thoughts together in a very general sense. We're just starting to spew things out here. Sort of see where the gaps are, and then we'll start filling in. Also, too, when it comes to, do we design cards by type? Do we design cards by type here? Or do we organize cards in terms of like card draw. Like let's make a really long list of cards that all involve card draw. And then we'll distribute them as we see fit once we come up with other card types, things like that. The other thing too is that once we have the card types down, I think there should be 4 of them. That will also sort of help narratively guide the design as well. So like having followers, right? If we were just do this, think of my past when I've printed cards out from a spreadsheet, having them that is too long. I want to spread them out so that when we print them out, they sort of are in fact the length of a typical playing card, right? So maybe just double up. Just double up, that seems correct. And we'll go 4 across. 4 across. The top bar will be boldened. We'll have a space and then bold again. So it's card title, card description, space, bolden. Do 4 rows of that. So here we are now organizing a spreadsheet. Welcome. Card space. Right. Empty space, card type. Sure, put something in here. Perfect. Perfect. We now have it. General idea of it. At least for our card designer, right? So now we can just like start coming up with ideas for cards and filling in the gaps. Like that. So what if we'll duplicate this page because it's format. No, wait, no, hold on. Delete it all. Delete. Okay, now that we're here, we'll click on this. We want centered. We want it all centered. I think for all of it, where's the text wrapped? All wrap. And we want it to start at the top. Now we'll duplicate. What has happened? Now we'll duplicate. All of our stuff? Yeah, we're... Yeah, it looks like we kept all our changes there. And I think I like the idea of followers, that we'll have literal human beings following our inanimate objects, becoming loyal subjects to our inanimate object on their journey to conquering the world. So a card type will be followers. We'll go card type 2. Card type 2. Card type 3. Card type 4. We'll make this one, excuse me, our 4 emotions. Essentially, this page will maybe just be dedicated to literally working out the 4 emotions, the 4 major emotions. That'll always be available for purchase. Objective cards? Maybe? What else? Oh, we need starter cards. Typically, the deck that you start off with in a deck building game are sort of unique. Typically, don't share a card type with a lot of the other cards. They're literally just there to give you the base bones of what you need to start building and buying cards. Start buying cards to build your deck. So we'll need starter cards. We'll put that all the way at the front. All the way at the front. Duplicate. Anything else? Anything else? Another thing here is Blurby cards, weakness cards, or debuff cards, play interactions, attack cards. It's similar to DC deck building game, attack cards, go up cards. Maybe there's some like some cards here where it's like I get to draw a card and my opponent gets to draw a card as well. Things like that, some double-edged sword sort of style cards. But is there any other way players to interact in a deck building game? That is the question. That is the question. Here. And then keywords. Maybe we'll put that here. Maybe we'll put keywords. And what I mean by keywords is like we'll have what I've been liking is cycle. Cycle would be cards with cycle, or cycle is draw one, draw X cards, then discard X cards from equal to a cards cycle value played. So you might play a card and the card will say cycle 3, and you can draw 3 cards, and then you choose 3 cards in your hand to put into your discard pile. It's sort of, another way to sort of like a pseudo sense of drawing cards. It'll increase your average overall, but potentially not as much power gain as if you just drew them straight up, right? That's my example of a keyword here. Any other possible keywords that we come up with, we'll put them here, we'll write them down, what they are defined as. All right, so cycle would literally be represented like this. Cycle, dash, and then a number. We'll hold placeholder as X. Yeah. Yeah. I'm liking that. I like how my computer screen is so freaking bright when it's white that you can actually see the room behind me lit up. Tiny little upstairs room that I'm in. Wife and kid are sleeping down the hall. Anything else here? Anything else? Let's make a to-do list. A to-do list. Let's say here, what's to-do list? I think that I want to get done first is figure last 3 card types. It's sort of over time, you know, you go about your daily life and you come up with an idea for a card. In fact, if you have an idea for a card, leave it in the comments. And feel free to do it on this video or any video in the future. You may not have a full understanding of what's going on here. Right, I do understand that like this is mostly in my head. This is not truly a clear explanation of what we're trying to build here. So hopefully future videos, this will become, the light will get brighter at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully you can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully I can. But once we have all of our card types down and the narrative is there, you know, now that I understand, now that, you know, once the narrative is there, coming up with a card idea, and then sort of thinking of like, oh, you know, like naming that card this makes sense for the follower card type, right? Once we have all the card types down, we'll be able to sort of see where we can put it necessarily. But then at some point we'll need to review it, right? Because we don't want, I don't know, we want it to be semi-balanced. I don't know if we want literally all of the card draw to be in one particular card type, right? So we could probably have themes, right? Themes? We could have themes of what the card types do, similar to Magic the Gathering. How, like, you know, red tends to have spells that deal damage. And spells that deal damage directly to your face. Things like that. Creatures with haste, right? There's themes. We can potentially do that as well. And once we have all the card types down, we can figure out the theme. Figure out the themes. I would like, I think, one more mechanic. Narratively related to the of gaining sentience. That's what I would like. Another mechanic, right? Nope. So similar to how we have the emotion mechanic, right? As a sort of like a major element that's going to separate our deck building game from others. Want one more. Let's say we want one more. And then we still want game ending objective. Game ending objective. Yeah. And then we'll need keyword mechanics. That'll sort of come and go with let's do this. Design cards. Keyword mechanics. That is literally like going to be the bulk of the game here. Make the rules. Figure out the rules. Turn ordering, things like that. Make, ooh, that's another thing we can add to our sheet here. We can rename this object cards. And this is what I think in terms of for the object cards, it would be like a larger index card sort of thing. And this would be your toaster. And your toaster would then say, have some sort, your toaster would then have some sort of special ability. Bigger. Let's double this up. Where's this delete column? Delete the column. Right, and it'll be like toaster. Toaster. Blender. Lawnmower. We're gaming now. And then it'll say like it'll have some sort of special ability, like once I don't know. Let's just give an example. I'm trying to think in terms narratively for a toaster, but it's like once per turn, you can put a card from your discard card pile on the bottom of your deck. Discard a card from hand. Ew. If you do, put a card from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck. Now, why does the toaster do that? Don't worry about it. It's not the point. Just sort of example here to myself and to you guys that, in fact, the idea is picking your inanimate object is sort of like also picking into playing your play style and your objective and maybe corners that can be cut as far as your deck design goes and things like that. As well as maybe encouraging you to play a particular style, something like that, right? Lawnmower could say like when understanding or untapped anger, you have tap all, anger, and destroy one. Bam, that's what the lawnmower does, right? The general idea that these are going to be like our hero characters, the character that we are playing, and their special ability, the object cards. Make rules, right? Make rules. I guess before that, we'll a sort of general sense of ordering here, but make rules, make object cards, make starter cards. View list. Yeah, I think these are the two big ones right here. Maybe three big ones right here. And I guess we should say how do people win? Typically in a deck building game, and so in our deck building game, all cards purchased cards will have a victory point value. See? Wins the game, and that's the most general sense of how people things like that. No, it looks like spaghetti. Hopefully, I was a little, or hopefully it makes a little bit of sense to you guys. It's sort of all over the place. Really not the best explanation of what the game is going to be or what I want the game to be, right? But hopefully it makes enough sense that we are now beginning a little journey here. Making a deck building game themed after being inanimate objects that are growing to sentience. We'll see if we can figure it out with this. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. I don't know if this content's good or not, but I think we're just going to go with this. Because I think at the very least, me doing this is going to force me to stick with this game for maybe longer than I typically would once the enthusiasm sort of wears off. Because I'm actually really excited to sort of begin this process and begin working on this game concept again. Because I think I really like this emotion idea. Maybe we'll flesh that out in text maybe later, like part of the rules that we're going to be making and writing down. I think this will be the first chunk of rules that we will write about and break down and figure out exactly how it's going to work and things like that. The base set of the game. So, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I will see you in the future.